Welcome back to the Beaver Banter Podcast. My name is CJ Baumgartner. My co-host is Ian Rivers. Ian, some positivity with the Beavers, especially in the men's sports this week. A lot going on. It's a week before Christmas. Things are kind of slowly starting to tamper down. It's a weird spot to be at, but first off, how you doing?
Not too bad. Not too bad. It's been a good week and a good weekend to Beaver sports, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. And why don't we start off talking a little bit about the men's basketball team? We talked about it over the week on last week's episode that obviously going 0-2 against two good teams on the road isn't the end of the world, but it's not what you wanted. And we said that they should at the very least split in this upcoming weekend, and they get a sweep in the best way. They play on Thursday night, conference game against Mary, and they get the win. And then they go to St. Cloud on Saturday, a little kind of unorthodox weekend series, and they get a double overtime victory against the Huskies. But first, let's talk about that game against Mary. Ian, what did you kind of see in that game as you kind of, how much you were able to watch, but at least how much you're able to kind of analyze and see? What are your thoughts on that first game this week?
Yeah, I actually watched the Mary game in its entirety, and it was a pretty good game all throughout for Bemidji State. They really, they got going early, and it was a close game. At halftime it was 4 points, but then the entirety of the second half, Bemidji State just kept slowly pulling away, slowly but steadily. It would go from 4 points to 8 points, and then it would come back to 6, and then Bemidji State would just, over the course of that 20 minutes, they just got it out to what it was eventually a 16-point victory at the end over Mary. And it never really felt like it was in true doubt for Bemidji State, especially once the second half kind of got going. They got hot. Some of their shooting, started going quite a bit better in the second half. They made some explosive plays. I remember that I believe it was Johnny Tennyson had a pretty electrifying dunk in the second half that got the crowd on their feet. What unfortunately limited crowd was, Christmas break starting up. There wasn't
Thursday
too many
finals week will do that.
Yeah, so that's not necessarily the main concern, but yeah, honestly, it was a pretty good game. I mean, they shot pretty well, 29% from three, 43% from the field is not necessarily the greatest, but hey, they got the win. It was pretty comfortable in the end, out rebounding them 46-37. That's always going to be a good recipe for success. And I think, we beat that drum so often, but when you got guys like Dalton Albrecht and John Sutherland in the middle, that's going to be a lot of rebounds eaten up just between the two of them. And of course, Albrecht with 20 points and 13 assists. And John Sutherland, a quieter day for him in this game with only 13 points and 8 rebounds. Or I'm sorry, did I say assists for Albrecht? I meant 13 rebounds. If I said assists, I feel like I did.
Yeah. I think overall, and there's a couple things that stuck out to me in this game. One, you mentioned the rebounds. I'm going to look to the free throw line. Mary was like 57%, but Bemidji State was 72. And again, not ideal for the Beavers, but, much better than Mary. They shot 43% from the field, while Mary shot 35.5. Again, that helps out your cause. BJ Davis having a nice start to his season, 21 points in the game as well. And like you talked about, Albrecht and Sutherland with their games. And really, I think it just kind of goes to show you, even when Sutherland doesn't necessarily have that all-world game, Bemidji State can still win handily and a 16-point victory because other players are on the floor doing things, and it opens things up. And when you have a good player in any basketball team, teams are going to say, well, we got to make sure we stop X player. And it opens up opportunities for the other players on the floor, but those players have to take advantage of it. And right now we're seeing, whether it's guys like Tennyson, whether it's guys like Albrecht, whether it's Davis, there's just a group of guys that are taking advantage of that situation. And that's how you're able to see Bemidji State get a 16-point victory against Mary.
Yeah, I mean, that was a huge game for them. I think it was a get-right game. They're 5-0 at home now on the season. They have not lost yet in Bemidji. So all good things, and really feels good to win by 16, especially after that Northern State game where things kind of got away from you at the end of that game.
Right.
It made it look a little bit uglier. So I think very good for the team to rebound with that type of a performance. And I think, like you said, a very good thing and something I think we'll see more often with the guard play being improved this year from last year. In specific, I think it's a deeper guard room than it was
I
last
think
year.
deeper is probably the better way to say it. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
Momo
right.
Kone was obviously phenomenal in his own right, but I think a lot of those young guards, like Braden Williams from last year, Johnny Tennyson, these guys are more comfortable in their game now, and it shows with the depth that this team has at the guard position. And I think that that only helps take the load off of guys like Sutherland and Albrecht. That when they're not having a terrific night, and I'm not saying that 13 points and 8 rebounds is not a good night. It's a very solid night, but it's just
Yeah,
not
what
what
are you
you're
talking
used
about?
to
Ian's going to
seeing.
lace up right now and put you in your place.
Right. Yeah. So again, it's a very good bounce back performance.
Yeah, exactly. It gets them the win. They're able to, like you said, be 5-0 at home, use a big second half to their advantage. Let's flash forward a little bit to Saturday's game against St. Cloud State. They go to double overtime. Albrecht at the buzzer gets Bemidji State the win. And, we talk about big games for everybody. Obviously, when you're in double overtime, your point figures are going to go up a little bit. But BJ Davis had 28 points in 48 minutes. Albrecht had 25 points in 43 minutes. Sutherland, 19 points in 44 minutes. And Braden Williams, 15 points as well. You had some guys kind of chipping in here and there, but overall, you talk about that guard depth and you talk about some of those guys and you kind of see it flash up a little bit there. What did you see in that St. Cloud State game for the Beavers?
Well, the 3-point shooting was absolutely lights out in this game. I mean, shooting on both sides was very, very high. Obviously, you put up 102 points, 103 points for Bemidji State. You're going to shoot pretty well. And I think the main factor that kept Bemidji State probably in this game with St. Cloud was 13 of 26 from the 3-point line.
50%.
50%. And it's not like, you have some weird outlier games where, if you don't shoot many threes because you just overpower the other team and maybe only shoot 10 threes and you went 5 of 10. That's not as impressive to me as going 13 of 26, making 13 threes as a team in the game. Pretty good for this team, who I think that's maybe one area that they've struggled is not in the amount of 3-pointers that they take or make, but it's just the percentage of which they hit them at. So that's a good game for the efficiency metrics there. Definitely like to see that from Bemidji State. And yeah, like you said, it was just a balanced attack. They had 4 or 5 players in double digit scoring, including 2 over 20, and then Sutherland himself at 19. So no double doubles in this one, but yeah, like you said, Dalton Albrecht at the buzzer and in Hollenbeck Hall again. I mean, that's the second buzzer beating win this team has had this year. What an exciting start through 12 games to have 2 already coming right down to the buzzer.
Right. It's Bemidji State's first overtime game since they played Sioux Falls at Bemidji State on January 28th of this year. It's the first double overtime game since the 2019-2020 season when the Beavers went into double overtime in Upper Iowa. And yeah, you talk about it. They get to play these close games against your conference teams. Obviously, you like to win every game like you did on Thursday night, but you do need to figure out how to win some of these games late and how to find plays and how to figure out who the, who are your dogs? Who are you guys who you're going to trust late in games? Who are guys that you want the basketball to be in their hands? And we've learned that Sutherland can do it. We've learned that Albrecht can do it. We know that there's some other guys on the floor for the Beavers who can do it. It puts you in those positions in those late game spots because every team does it in practice, but it's so much of a different thing when you get out onto the floor and it's a game rep. And for them to have that, it's not the be all end all, but it's a nice little feather in your cap that you can know how to win some of these games late. It wouldn't have been a big loss if Bemidji State wouldn't have come out on top in this game. It would have felt like a missed opportunity for sure, but I think it would have went 1-1 on the weekend, figure it out after Christmas. But to get that extra win, and instead of being 7-5, you're 8-4, and it doesn't feel like that big of a shift, but it is. And Bemidji State kind of grabs the momentum back that maybe stalled out last week, and they go into the break a team that is, they have 3 losses in the conference, or what's their record?
4-2 in the conference.
4-2 in the conference. There you go. 4-2 in the conference. They're 8-4 overall. they're in a good spot right now going into Christmas break. And I'm not saying that they're going to be at the top of the NSIC regular season standings, but they're going to be in that top group. And picking up games like this is a big reason why.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what their record was going into Christmas break last season, and it was
It was
not.
much different.
It was, I believe, it was 2-4, so completely flip flopped. And then they had two games over the New Year's against UMary and Minot State, where they kind of swept, started getting some of the momentum back into their sails, and then
Right.
having to make a run at the playoffs in the second half of the season. Now you've set yourself up where you're fifth place in the NSIC basketball standings, heading into this Christmas break. And now you can have a little wiggle room come down towards the end of the season. Because remember, Bemidji State kind of had to get hot towards the end of the season and win more games than they lost in order to sneak in. And I think they made it pretty comfortably at the end of the day.
Right. Well, they ended up getting a home game in the first round.
Right, exactly. So they made it pretty comfortably, but you were still always just kind of wondering, like, are they going to hold on and do this? And that might have been partially because that was like the first season that we had seen that sort of success in a long time from the basketball program. So it was like, oh, are they going to hold on? Is this all been kind of an illusion? I think many Timberwolves fans might be feeling that way right now too, being at 20-5 or something like that. But yeah, I think it's just a great start, to be 8-4 and 4-2 in the conference. I think it would be pretty unrealistic for Bemidji State to miss the NSIC tournament. There's 15 teams in the conference. 12 of them make the NSIC tournament. So I think
it'd be a flat out disappointment if they didn't get in at this point,
especially after a start like this. Right. So, I mean, you kind of have to adjust your expectations. And I think that we'll touch more on that once the second half of the year gets started. And once we see a few more games, because the top 4 seeds in the NSIC do get a bye straight to Sioux Falls for that tournament.
Right.
So, we're not going to say anything like that yet. But hey, focus right now on making sure you get one of those 5 to 8 seeds and getting another home playoff game.
Right, exactly. Getting a situation like Bemidji State was in a year ago where they got to host Augustana instead of having to go travel somewhere. So last year, Bemidji State in the conference to start the year, they got 1 win against Minnesota Crookston, and then they lost 4 in a row in conference play. And they got another win over Crookston. So they were 2-4, like you said, going into the new year. And then they got a couple. Okay, so they were 4-4 going into 2023 in the conference. And they needed a couple wins against UMary and Minot State. But yeah, once they hit January, all of a sudden, things really started falling into place and they started to win games. And things really kind of turned a corner after that point. Remember, they lost on December 9th of 2022, 75-49 at Moorhead. When Bemidji State played them later in the season, when they were ranked 23 at the time, Bemidji State won 88-87. So, like, this was a team that turned some things around a little bit as the season went on last year. And they're in a much better spot. They're 4-2 right now. I know we said that they were 4-4. They had the same amount of wins, but it feels like ever since last Christmas, they just turned a corner and things have just been different. And it, like you talked about, they're just in a much better position where even if they play at the same level they were a year ago, or if they, just kind of cruise to that spot, they're going to be in the tournament and they're going to be in a position to get a home game. It's, can you steal a couple games throughout the second half of the season and get yourself into those top 4 seeds?
Yeah, I think that this team is easily a top, 8 team in the conference. I think that goes without saying, especially with the guard depth that we just talked about. And, it's a little bit like the Timberwolves. Like, they've got 2 big men that I doubt many teams in this conference can hang with when they're both on the floor at the same time. So I think that gives them a big benefit heading forwards into the new year.
Which one is more like Rudy and which one is more like Nas?
I don't know. I guess they're both pretty good defenders when I've watched them. And that's not to say that one of Nas or Rudy is like not a good defender. Obviously, Rudy's a good defender, but it's not to say that Nas isn't a good defender.
Which one do you think is more French? Maybe is
which one is more French? I don't know. We'll have to figure that out and get back.
Which one is more likely to touch all of the microphones?
Oh
Um,
god. Yeah. Anyways, um, no, yeah, I really like where this team is at, and I think that they can absolutely make a run. And if we get some decent results over the next couple of weeks, then I think that absolutely has to creep into your mind that BSU men's basketball can make a run at that 4 seed. I mean, right now they're tied with Minot State for that 4 seed, so
mhm.
it's all going to be up in the air. But we'll see what happens come a
Right.
month from now.
As we've learned last year with men's hockey and men's basketball, things once you kind of hit the second semester of the school year can take a turn for the better or take a turn for the absolute worst. It kind of all just depends. So we'll kind of keep an eye on things. Ian, Bemidji State off until January, what do we say, like the 10th or something like that?
Fifth and
5th.
sixth, they play
And they're on the
at Southwest and at Sioux Falls. So
right. So those are a couple things. Sioux Falls might be a little bit tough, but you should go down to Southwest and win. There's no reason you can't do that. So we'll talk about that as that gets closer. But good opportunity here for the men's basketball team. Ian, the women's had a similar situation of playing Mary and St. Cloud State. How did those games go?
they didn't go quite as well. Mary, it was a 13-point loss, 59-72, and it was really just from the jump. BSU was not quite in the game. Only 6 first quarter points for Bemidji State. And then it was a pretty solid game from there, but again, just too big of a hole for BSU to climb out of once you start the first quarter down 8, which 8 points is not an insurmountable hole. But as we've seen with the inconsistencies from this team, when you start the game down 8, it's harder to make up that ground come later in the game. And then, of course, St. Cloud State, they're a pretty good team, 7-3 now on the season, I believe, for the Huskies women's team. And it was an 8-point game in Hollenbeck Hall, a little bit closer of an affair, but there wasn't really one quarter. I think that's the one positive to think. Like, you see a 6-point gap in one of the quarters, but it's not like one of those, man, we lost by 12 in this one quarter specifically. That's really what killed us. So they did keep everything pretty close to the vest. But Alyssa Hill got 16 points in this game. Amy Shiforgan, 10 rebounds and 3 assists for Amy as well. So, some positives to go off of, but yeah, definitely not the team results that you would like to see. You were hoping to maybe steal a win out of one of these games.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just not your night, as we kind of talked about. I mean, when you look at the game on Thursday night, shooting 20% from three, not necessarily ideal. And if you're Mary, they shot. It's almost when you just chalk up to Mary was 48% from the field. Now, again, I didn't break the tape down, so I can't tell you if it was bad defense or Mary was making all their shots. Mary's 4-2 in the NSIC. They're probably making their shots. But they just made it at a higher clip than they did. And that sometimes in basketball, when you play Ian, it's literally just, I don't know, man, we're in the right spot. They're a good team that's making all their shots. I don't know what we're supposed to do. Do you feel like it was that kind of game? Do you think maybe, yeah, it was, but there were still some opportunities? Kind of, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it just comes down to the fact that, I mean, they shot pretty well from the field, and Bemidji State really didn't. I mean, 20% from three, that's not necessarily what you want to see. It wasn't the worst game we've ever seen statistically. I mean, the Beavers put up 59 points. I think that's probably on one of their higher spectrums of the year, at least around average for them. But shooting 42%, it came down to how many shots are you willing to take. And you look at the rebounding battle, that's another big deficit. It's a 14-point rebound deficit, 42-28. So, I think that's got something to do with it. I hate that we talk about, or at least I bring it up in every basketball game, but it is a very important statistic. Just like turnover margin for football, the more often you win the turnover margin in a game of football, the more often you're going to win the game. And that's, there's some variations to it. Like we talked about last week, with, if you don't miss any shots, it's hard to get rebounds, but it's a big part of basketball. And I think that's mostly what hurt the Beavers against Mary in that game.
Yeah, exactly. They ended up playing in that St. Cloud State game. Kind of what are some other thoughts that you kind of had about that?
Well, I think it was mostly just, Bemidji State didn't get to the line enough in that game. Look at the free throw disparity. Bemidji State only shot 11 free throws compared to St. Cloud State's 26.
Dang.
St. Cloud State did not even shoot that well from the field. 38% overall, 14%, 2 of 14 from three-point field. The rebounding battle was close. I guess let's check the turnovers really quick. St. Cloud State had 10, Bemidji State had 16. So, six turnovers isn't going to make or break a game. I guess a close game like that, it might, but, it just comes down to the fact. And I don't know whether it was, poor officiating, whether St. Cloud State was getting more of the call. I'm not sure if it was that or if Bemidji State just wasn't being aggressive enough inside, in the post. But 15 free throws, difference, and St. Cloud State had 10 more points from the stripe. Guess what? They won by 8. So that comes down to mean quite a bit. I think that's going to be something that you want to look for in the future.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, it's hard to tell because again, and even if you watch it on TV, sometimes it's hard. You sometimes have to be in the gym to really have a feel of what an officiating or what the flow of a game is and things like that. But Bemidji State was able to come back and they got a win. They played earlier this week against Valley City State, and Bemidji State came away with a 67-57 win. The Beavers are now 3-7 on the year. And it's kind of interesting things to note in this game, Ian. Bemidji State won by 10 because they were able to create turnovers. Valley City had 20 turnovers in the game. Bemidji State shot 38% from the field, 18% only from three, and they got out rebounded 32-44. But, when you steal some of those possessions and you take advantage of your baskets, that's kind of just what they were able to do. They used a big second quarter to kind of put them in front and a big fourth quarter to ice away the game. And I don't know, they sit now, they get done with their, I believe this is their last non-conference game for the regular season. So now things kind of move on to the full NSIC slate. They're 3-7. What are your thoughts on kind of the Valley City State game?
Well, they took my advice, even though we're just recording this right now, this second, and they have not
They knew
heard my advice
exactly
yet.
what you were thinking. Yeah.
They got to the free throw line more in this game. They shot 30 free throws, and Valley City State shot 13. And again, we don't know how the officiating looked in this game. Was Bemidji State getting some ticky-tack calls? I am not sure. But being more aggressive in the post, use a shot fake, then go up. That sort of just get to the line, be aggressive in the paint. And they shot 30 free throws in this game, and they made 23 of them. That's a pretty good clip, 76%. Anytime you're over 75, that is a successful night from the free throw stripe. Of course, Valley City State was 84% from the stripe, but like we said, 13 free throws, making 11 of 13. When the other team puts in 23 free throws is not what you want to see for Valley City State. So I like the aggression, at least from a box score perspective from Bemidji State, where you're getting to the line more. You're looking at points in the paint. Valley City State had 20. Bemidji State had 36. So I think that's what you want to look for Bemidji State. Use the post game a little bit more. Take some inspiration from the men's team and use those big bodies down there, because even if you're not getting buckets, you might be drawing foul calls, getting to the line, getting the other team in foul trouble, and that's what you want to see. I want to see Bemidji State be a little bit more aggressive once we flip now into the new year.
Bemidji State's first win since November 18th. That breaks a 32 day streak since their last win. They came against Minnesota Morris at the BSU gymnasium as well. Their next couple games, they go with the men to Marshall to play Southwest, and then they go to Sioux Falls to play USF. And we'll kind of get a little bit of taste of what this team is going to be like. Ian, if you're Bemidji State, if you're trying to fix kind of what's been maybe holding back the girls team throughout the first handful of conference games, what are some things where, you would just say, like, here's some areas probably where we just need to tighten some things up in that second half?
Well, I think the turnovers have been a big thing. Every time we look at the Beavers and they're on the wrong end of a ugly score line, it's usually comes down to turnovers and free throw shooting. Like I said, I think those are the big things. Be aggressive in the passing lanes, generate more turnovers, try to be a little bit smarter with the ball, use a pass fake, use a shot fake. Those are the two biggest things, I guess. Pass fakes to avoid, maybe throwing the ball into a passing lane and getting a steal or giving it up for a steal. And then shot fakes to generate maybe some more players jumping in the air, and then you can use your body, go into them, get a foul call, something like that. Watch James Harden's tape. That's all I can tell you. Watch the 76ers of a couple years ago when James Harden and Joel Embiid are just flopping around out there like a wet fish. Because that's basically what it looked like. Go to the free throw line and avoid the turnovers.
Grow beard is what I'm hearing you say. Is that
yes.
Yes. So yeah, I think the turnovers are a big part of it. I also think, just that outside shooting. And again, maybe I'm misreading this. It feels like the way Bemidji State wants to play basketballs. They want to play down in the post. They want to get down in the low block. They want to be a team that dominates on the inside. And that's fair. I think that's a totally fair way to play basketball. Sometimes you just on those days where you need some 3-point shooting, feels like they haven't gotten it. But at the end of the day, like you said, if they're going to be a team that wants to do that, they're going to need to take care of the basketball, and they're going to need to win in the rebounding department as well. So that's, I simply would just make more shots and rebound better is basically, maybe is what it sounds like. But the thing is just maybe more consistency in that 3-point shooting, getting a little bit better in the rebounding department. And that's kind of where things sit right now with that program. So one last thing before we switch over to hockey, Ian, is back on the men's side of things. Dalton Albrecht was named NSIC Player of the Week following his game-winning shot. So congratulations to him.
Yeah, well deserved. I mean, he had a great weekend yet again, so I'm not shocked to see him earning some honors, especially with a game winner in that sort of fashion.
Albrecht averaged 22.5 points, 11 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1 steal over the weekend. He went 15 for 31 from the field, 4 of 12 from 3, 11 from 15 at the foul line, and had his national leading 8th double-double with 20 points and 13 rebounds. And against St. Cloud State, added 25 points and 9 rebounds, so he missed another double-double, logged 75 minutes of time on the court this week. Albrecht is averaging a double-double with 17.8 points, 11 rebounds. He's making over 49% from the field, leads the team in free throws made, second on the team in three-pointers made with 20. Albrecht has scored 20 or more points in 3 of his last 4 games, and has a double-double in 2 of his last 3. It's the second week an NSIC Player of the Week for Bemidji State has been named. John Sutherland got the award on the first week of the month as well. Dumping a lot of information on Ian, courtesy of bsubeavers.com, but I think we kind of forget just how good that Albrecht has been in the double-double department, getting the rebounds and getting not only just his points, but getting those boards. When you're leading the nation in double-doubles, you're doing something right.
Yeah, and I think maybe unfairly so, but Albrecht came into the season a little bit riding, not riding the coattails, but he was in the shadows of John Sutherland, who made all the noise last year. And everybody knew that Albrecht was a pretty good post player, but I don't think we expected to see this type of a jump out of him this season. And something you brought up was, I believe he went 4 of 12 over the weekend from beyond the arc. That's quite a few attempts, which did surprise me, but making him at a 33% clip for a big man like that, that's a pretty good way to space the floor, because that can be the one kind of trap issue with playing 2 big men like that at the same time, is the spacing can become an issue. And so when Albrecht like that, like Karl Anthony Towns, can spread the floor and space the floor a little bit better with his outside shooting, it really helps the spacing and the flow of the game.
So Albrecht is Cat, and we're saying Sutherland is Gobert. Is that what we settled on?
Yeah, sure. That works for me.
Yeah, sure. Okay. All right. Cool. And Naz Reid is just Naz Reid, because
Naz Reid is the vibes.
Naz Reid, I mean, step aside for a Timberwolves thing. Naz Reid is literally all vibes. Like, the reason he's so popular is because his name is Naz Reid. He's a great player, great story. He wouldn't be as popular as he was if his name wasn't Naz Reid. That's right. That's my fun take. I love Naz Reid, but he's just The dude is all vibes. And a great player, but vibes are very important. As we've seen with the men's basketball team, vibes are good right now. Sneaking over into women's hockey, vibes aren't quite great right now. Ian, they're getting ready for their Battle of the Burgh over the weekend. I feel like when you say Burgh, you have to kind of like really like grit yourself when you say it. Am I wrong?
No, yeah, absolutely. You're wrong about over the weekend. It's over
R-
next weekend.
right.
But
Next.
so yeah,
Yeah.
that's the next thing on the docket for them. Yeah, is the Battle of the Burgh, hosted by, I'm assuming, Robert Morris, who is a school in that area of Pennsylvania.
The
So
Colonials.
the Colonials, yes. So their first game will be on Friday, December 29th at 6:01 against Robert Morris, and then they will play the winner or loser, depending on what their game happens, of Colgate and Maine on the 30th. And that time is, of course, to be announced based off of what happens in the first game. But that's what the women's team is preparing for. They haven't played in over a week. That's, kind of what we're expecting, this time of year is some slow headlines. There's not a lot of action going on. They, of course, are still fresh off of their second win of the season against St. Thomas. So, yeah, I mean, I don't have much to say about this matchup. I don't know much about Robert Morris on the women's
You haven't been
side, or
grinding
even
tape?
Colgate or Maine for that matter. So, no, unfortunately, I have not been grinding much tape of East Coast women's hockey teams.
I mean, who really wants to grind tape on East Coast hockey, anyways?
Yeah, in general.
Just in general, East Coast hockey. They get the horns down on that one.
Not good.
Not good. No Colgate and Maine I'm taking either. You're not in on either of those?
No, I mean, I guess the one thing is I know that it's probably not. I have no idea how good these teams are in terms of the women's game, but I know that if this was men's hockey, I would be a little bit more apprehensive to play against either Colgate or Maine, because the Black Bears have kind of found themselves once again on the men's side of hockey. They've had a pretty stellar season, at least compared to the last 10 years. So I would be a little bit more nervous. My legs might be trembling a bit if I was the men's team going into this tournament. But on the women's side, you never know. Let's hope maybe we can pick up a couple wins.
For the men's hockey team, we got a couple things to note. One about certain Beaver making the national team. We also have a little bit of analysis on last season, Ian. Remember when things went bad for the Beavers? And a lot of it we kind of attributed to this team just isn't healthy. They're banged up and they're clearly kind of running on fumes. And, there were some things that were wrong, obviously, but it was more like, you can't really get to the X's and O's stuff when your guys are just hurt and playing out of position and gassed and all that kind of stuff. And the kind of was the way for Bemidji State early in the season. They would play some great games, and then they just kind of some clunkers in there, and they were missing their main goaltender. They missed some guys left and right. They get their goaltender back, and they sweep. Wow, who would have thought?
Yeah, it was crazy. Matthias Scholl just got put on the team sheet, and everybody gets super excited that he's back. And I don't know how much I attribute that. Obviously, we've seen it in hockey a lot before, where a goalie comes back and the team just plays differently in front of that goalie for some reason. And that seemed to be what happened this weekend with Matthias Scholl in net, because this was a different Bemidji State team that I had seen, in a Bowling Green team who was coming off of a sweep against Ferris State. So it was a little bit shocking to see them be this dominant against Bowling Green. It was the most calm I've ever been watching this team. I think I
And
brought
that's
up
saying something, by the way.
right. I think I brought up during the game, this was the most shot disparity that I remember seeing Bemidji State have in a long time. Even when Bemidji State's had successful, games in the past in series and weekends, that I can't find the shots for some reason as a total. Oh, here we go. 19 on Friday for Bowling Green compared to 46 for Bemidji State. I feel like that is almost always the opposite, where Bemidji State, yeah, we won 3-1, but we only put 19 shots on net and we somehow saved 45. And, that's what I'm used to seeing from Bemidji State. And it was more of the same on Saturday, where, let me go ahead and pull up the shot totals again. Bowling Green had 18 shots. Bemidji State had 40. So an 86 to, 36 shot disparity, or 34, I think, over the weekend for Bemidji State. That was insane to see. Matthias Scholl looked pretty good in the net. I mean, he allowed 3 goals on the weekend, but, it's his first weekend back in a long time. I respect the coaching staff for giving him both games. In the past, we're used to seeing Scholl get one and Enright get another, but whether it's the fact that they are like, yeah, Enright's played enough, and we don't have to feel like we're being fair anymore because he's already played half of a season, or not.
Well, the point of splitting a goalie is so that way you don't wear out the other one. And if Scholl's been off for weeks and weeks and weeks, and the other guy's playing a ton, it just is like you take your own bye week here and just rest up for Enright. But I mean, also it just might have been, well, dang, he's in net and we only allowed 19 shots on goal. Why don't we just why don't we put the lineup in the exact same way the next day or the next game? Because I believe they were off on the Friday. No, it was Thursday, Friday last week.
Friday series, yeah.
Yes.
Well, it was an interesting series to watch too, because you were so worried about, well, Eric Polkamp missed both games, like we'll talk about, I'm sure, in just a second. He's off with the World Junior teams, and then Casper Magnuson was actually able to stay for the Thursday game because Norway's team got word that his parents were actually in the States to watch him play. And so they said, you can come out on Friday morning. And so he actually was able to play on Thursday, and then he had to leave on Friday. So he wasn't there for that game. And yeah, I mean, Bemidji State, the only thing you're worried about now is like, what does the second half of this season look like? And we'll be talking about that a little bit next week as we kind of have a dead period here. Yeah, I mean, we're still a little bit banged up, with Jackson Judding. On Thursday night, Carter Jones, who's been playing really well, took a pretty gnarly hit and didn't play on Friday night. And then on Friday night, you had Leighton Road go down in the third period, and he came back on the ice. Then he came back on the bench, and then he vanished from the bench altogether. So that is a pretty horrifying injury for most Bemidji State fans. And we don't have any word on him, but that is a major injury, and hopefully it does not. I mean, if there is any time that he's going to pick up any sort of a knock, it would be, I guess, right now, where we have a week off, and then we play another game against St. Cloud State, or another series against St. Cloud State. But like we'll talk about, I don't care what happens in that series. Like, it does not affect the pairwise is gone at this point. Yeah, against St. Cloud State. Like, if they get swept by SCSU, it's not going to affect how the rest of the season looks at all, because of the pairwise is already gone, unless somehow Bemidji State wins out and can maybe get an at-large berth, maybe. But you would have to physically win out. So like I'm saying, this series does not matter in the slightest, hardly. Other than, of course, you don't want to lose any hockey games. But yeah, I think it was a big weekend to get 6 points. We got to start playing this Thursday-Friday series more before the Christmas break, because last year in Mankato, getting 5 out of 6 points from the Mavericks. And then this year,
it was that series.
Yep, it was a Thursday-Friday series. And that was the one in Mankato right before Christmas break. And now we've done it against Bowling Green and got a sweep. So Bemidji State currently sits top of the standings. I'm getting deja vu, and I'm a little bit horrified as to what's going to come in the second half of the season, because it's like bar for bar with last season, the way that it ended up, sweeping going into that last series, and then, you're top of the standings. But
a very competitive CCHA with the Bemidji State Beavers sweeping on a Thursday-Friday series to end the year. And then
surely we'll find our footing and won't finish 6th at the end of the season, right?
Surely we'll find our footing and won't lose a couple guys to like injuries or guys going to national teams or something like that.
Right. Well, and it's a good stretch to miss those guys for, because it's Bowling Green, and now you have those 6 points, and you play a non-conference series, which, again, like we said, yeah, you want to win because you want to beat St. Cloud State, but it's not the end of the world if you lose. And then you have Ferris State, who, I mean, that series, we'll touch on it more once we get to that, week, because they're the one team in the league right now that's not necessarily playing super competitive hockey. So you want to get the points that you can off of Ferris State, obviously, when they're the team that's maybe the punching bag of the conference. But if you're going to miss your guys for one last series, that Ferris State series might be a good series to have. It's a good stretch of the year. Maybe we can get some health back coming into mid-January when we finally have some more games again.
The Beaver Banter Podcast. My name is CJ Baumgartner. Ian Rivers, my co-host. Ian, we are going to wrap this up. We are going to have a podcast next week where we're talking with Lucas of Beaver territory. He's going to make his kind of monthly, it feels like it's been monthly check-in now throughout the season, and at least the hockey season. And he's going to be in and he's going to talk some college hockey with us, with the women's hockey, the men's hockey. We'll get his opinion on the Bowling Green series and also on the upcoming St. Cloud State series, the national team guys, and just overall his thoughts kind of going into that second half. So, we're not going anywhere. We have a podcast coming out next week. So in the mess of Christmas and New Year's and everybody's schedule being out of whack, the Beaver Banter Podcast will still be right with you. So you can take solace in that fact. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Listen and watch us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, on our pages there as well. We'll see you guys next week. Merry